Hello, English learners, and welcome back to English in Comfort, your cozy English podcast for learning English through easy conversation. I'm Mark, and today we are bringing you more than 100 important English words for everyday life. These are the real useful words that native speakers use all the time. Knowing these words is so important because you will hear them everywhere. In movies, at the store, at work, and in almost every conversation you have. I'm going to make it easy for you with examples so you can practice with me. So if you want to boost your vocabulary and improve your speaking, get comfortable. And let's get started. Actually, we use this to say the truth or a fact. For example, I actually like rainy days. Really. This means very or it shows surprise. For example, I am really tired today. Just. This means only or a very short time ago. For example, I just woke up. Maybe. We say this when something is possible but not certain. For example, maybe we can get pizza tonight? Almost. This means very nearly but not completely. For example, dinner is almost ready. Always. This means at all times or forever. For example, I always drink coffee in the morning. Never. This means not at any time. For example, I never wake up early on Sundays. Sometimes. This means occasionally, not all the time. For example, sometimes I walk to work. Usually. This means under normal conditions. For example, I usually sleep for 8 hours. Often. This means happening many times. For example, we often go to the park. Also. This means in addition or to. For example, I bought apples and also some bananas. Anyway, we use this to change the subject or return to a topic. For example, anyway, how was your weekend? Sure. This means you are certain or you agree. For example, are you sure about this? Right. This means correct or true. For example, you're right about the weather. Exactly. This means completely accurate. For example, that's exactly what I meant. Probably. This means very likely to happen. For example, it will probably rain tomorrow. Definitely. This means without a doubt. For example, I will definitely be there. Absolutely. This means completely or totally. For example, you are absolutely correct. Seriously. This means not joking in a serious way. For example, are you seriously leaving now? Honestly. This means telling the truth. For example, honestly, I don't know the answer. Basically. We use this to explain something in a simple way. For example, basically, we just need more time. Especially. This means more than usual. For example, I love food, especially pizza. Finally. This means after a long time. For example, I finally finished my work. Recently. This means a short time ago. For example, I recently started reading a new book. Already. This means before now or earlier than expected. For example, I already ate lunch. Yet. We use this for something that has not happened but will. For example, I haven't finished the movie yet. Still. This means a situation is continuing. For example, are you still working? Instead. This means in place of something else. For example, I will have tea instead of coffee. Else. This means other or different. For example, do you need anything else? Enough. This means as much as necessary. For example, we have enough food for everyone. Together. This means with another person. For example, let's go to the store together. Alone. This means without other people. For example, I like walking alone in the park. Both. This means the two of them. For example, I like both chocolate and vanilla. Either. This means one or the other of two things. For example, you can have either soup or salad. Neither. This means not one and not the other. For example, neither of us knows the way. Half. This means one of two equal parts. For example, I only ate half of my sandwich. Whole. This means entire or complete. For example, I read the whole book in one day. Happen. This means to take place or occur. For example, what will happen next? Become. This means to begin to be something. For example, the caterpillar will become a butterfly. Seem. This means to give the impression of being. For example, you seem very happy today. Feel. This means to experience an emotion or sensation. For example, I feel a little cold. Look. This means to direct your eyes or to appear a certain way. For example, you look tired. Sound. This means what you hear or how an idea seems. For example, that sounds like a great plan. Mean. This is what a word or action represents. For example, what does this word mean? Matter. This means to be important. For example, it doesn't matter what color it is. Care. This means to feel concern or interest. For example, I really care about my friends. Mind. We use this to ask if someone is annoyed by something. For example, do you mind if I sit here? Worry. This means to feel anxious about something. For example, don't worry, everything will be fine. Remember. This means to keep something in your memory. For example, please remember to buy milk. Forget. This means to fail to remember. For example, I always forget my keys. Remind. This means to help someone remember something. For example, can you remind me to call my mom? Notice. This means to see or pay attention to something. For example, did you notice her new haircut? Realize. This means to suddenly understand something clearly. For example, I realize I made a mistake. Figure. This means to understand or solve something. For example, I need to figure out this problem. Guess. This means to give an answer without being sure. For example, can you guess what is inside the box? Wonder. This means to be curious about something. For example, I wonder what the weather will be like. Expect. This means to believe something will happen. For example, I expect him to arrive at noon. Promise. This means to say you will definitely do something. For example, I promise I will help you. Allow. This means to give permission. For example, they do not allow dogs inside. Accept. This means to say yes to an offer or gift. For example, please accept this small present. Refuse. This means to say no to something. For example, I refuse to eat that. Decide. This means to make a choice. For example, I need to decide what to wear. Choose. This means to pick something from a group. For example, you can choose any book you want. Prefer. This means to like one thing more than another. For example, I prefer tea over coffee. Suggest. This means to offer an idea. For example, I suggest we leave early. Recommend. This means to say something is good. For example, can you recommend a good restaurant? Handle. This means to manage a situation. For example, don't worry, I can handle the pressure. Manage. This means to succeed in doing something difficult. For example, did you manage to find the keys? Deal. This means to take action about a problem. For example, we will deal with that tomorrow. Avoid. This means to stay away from someone or something. For example, try to avoid eating too much sugar. Ignore. This means to pay no attention. For example, just ignore the loud noise outside. Bother. This means to annoy someone. For example, I am sorry to bother you so late. Annoy? This means to make someone a little angry. For example, that loud music is starting to annoy me. Ruin. This means to destroy or damage something completely. For example, the rain will ruin my shoes. Fix. This means to repair something broken. For example, can you fix my computer? Improve. This means to make something better. For example, I want to improve my English skills. Change. This means to make or become different. For example, I need to change my clothes. Share. This means to give a part of something to others. For example, let's share this pizza. Borrow. This means to take something and return it later. For example, can I borrow your pen? Lend. This means to give something to someone for a short time. For example, I will lend you my umbrella. Spend. This means to pay money or use time. For example, I like to spend time with my family. Save. This means to keep money or things for the future. For example, I am trying to save money for a car. Awesome. This means extremely good or impressive. For example, that movie was awesome. Awful. This means very bad or unpleasant. For example, the weather today is awful. Terrible. This is another word for very bad. For example, I had a terrible headache yesterday. Amazing. This means causing great surprise or wonder. For example, the view from the mountain is amazing. Perfect. This means completely right or without flaws. For example, this jacket is a perfect fit. Weird. This means very strange or unusual. For example, that is a very weird story. Strange. This means unusual or difficult to understand. For example, I heard a strange noise in the house. Normal. This means typical, usual, or ordinary. For example, it is normal to feel nervous before a test. Common. This means happening often or found everywhere. For example, colds are very common in winter. Rare. This means not happening very often. For example, it is rare to see snow here. Obvious. This means easy to see or understand. For example, it is obvious that he is tired. Confusing. This means difficult to understand clearly. For example, the instructions on this box are confusing. Simple. This means easy to understand or do. For example, the rules of the game are very simple. Complicated. This means difficult with many parts. For example, building a computer is complicated. Busy. This means having a lot to do. For example, I am very busy at work today. Available. This means free to be used or spoken to. For example, are you available for a meeting at 2? Ready. This means prepared for an action. For example, I am ready to go. Exhausted. This means extremely tired. For example, after the long hike, I was exhausted. Starving. This means feeling extremely hungry. For example, let's eat, I am starving. And that brings us to the end. That was over 100 important words for your daily life. You did a great job following along. Which word was your favorite or which one is completely new to you? Share your experience in the comments. We love reading your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe to English in Comfort for more everyday conversations and useful vocabulary. Thank you for listening today. Keep practicing, keep improving, and take care, everyone.